45% of you will run out of money in retirement, says Morningstar. Wow. That's nuts. Let's read this article right here. Here's the headline. About 45% of Americans will experience retirement funding shortfalls. Shortfalls? I'm a trucker now. Shortfalls, with females who are single at retirement more at risk than single males and couples. Yikes, dude, yikes. So anytime I see these kind of numbers, I always say, how did we get there? How do we build this conclusion? Because the headline number always dominates. I get it. You see the stupid news media all the time. The headline number always documented is always that, and no one actually reads the data. How do we get there? How do we build this? It kind of reminds me of something that didn't happen too long ago, like in 2020, where everything under the sun was labeled a certain cause of death. You were in a motorcycle, you got killed. Your cause of death was something else, if you know what I'm saying. It actually kind of brought me back to this book I just got done reading, Moth and the Iron Lung. It's such a good book, man. It's such a good book about the origins and of the polio virus. And I'll just share with you here right quick. So before the introduction of the vaccine, if someone was stricken with poliomyelitis, they had to exhibit the symptoms for 24 hours to count on the register as a true case of paralytic polio. After the vaccine, it requires 60 days of paralysis. With a flick of the pen, the case of paralytic polio began to instantly disappear from the record books. Basically, what he's saying is they changed the definition. And when you had changed the definition, all of a sudden the number of cases magically dropped. And so the thing is, people see this study, they'll say, oh my goodness, here's polio before the vaccine, here's polio after the vaccine, not knowing the difference between poliovirus and poliomyelitis, and they'll assume that the vaccine caused it. It may or may not be. Well, I'm not going to challenge that here on YouTube, but may or may not be. But if you change the definition, which it was drastically, you're going to inherently have less of the thing you're measuring. And the same thing is kind of here. I want to know, how did these guys come up with this? What is the mechanism of their study? And I noticed this is from Morningstar, and my man Jack Vander High, something like that. He used to be with the EBRI, Employee Benefits Research Institute. So I'm a big fan of Jack. I'm glad he's over at Morningstar. And he does good work. So we're just going to go down here. We're going to see, how did we get this? I'm going to show you my highlights I have here. Just a couple things that jumped out at me, kind of made me chuckle. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. The model uses the 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, which I have up here. I'll show you here real quick. This is the Survey of Consumer Finances. All this we got right here. So that's what the model is looking at here. Inputs for each household, such as age, gender, race, and ethnicity, balances of financial accounts, salary, and other job-related information. Note, we assume a baseline retirement age of 65 in this analysis. All right, so they're saying you're going to run out of money. 45% of you are assuming you're going to retire at 65. If you retire earlier than that, your likelihood goes up. If you retire at 70, your likelihood goes down. All right, let's keep going. The model projects retirement outcomes for each household across 1,000 independent scenarios, with a projection age going to 120. All right, so that initially I was like, well, they're using 120 as their life expectancy. No, they weren't. They weren't. They were saying household members are not assumed to pass away at a specific age, but we are using, stochastically means it's just random, but we're using it based on the core right here. The model simulates whether death occurs based on Social Security life tables. So we might get one or two people go to 120 out of the 1,000 that they're using, but they're using the actuary tables from the Social Security Administration, or not the actuarial, but the absolutely real tables from the Social Security Administration. So I appreciate that, actually, because the idea that if we just have everyone live until 95, and then you go to some random number of how many people we're going to run out of money. Well, random people don't live all till they're 95. It's just not a good method. So I like what they did here. The model has specific states for long-term service and support, because having to pay for long-term service and support, long-term care, is one of the biggest financial risks for retirees. That's a big deal. That kind of got me thinking a little bit. So, and we're going to keep going down here, right here. Once retirement commences, the model estimates the household's retirement expenses. All right. These expenses consist of two elements: standard expenses with no long-term care costs and one with long-term care costs. As we mentioned in the introduction, long-term care costs are random, only occurring when the model simulates that an individual requires home health care or requires a nursing home. Requires home health care. Interesting. Long-term care costs are based on national median costs from generous cost of care studies. So I'm already kind of, this is interesting. This is interesting. Now, one thing they don't say is how many people are affected with long-term care costs. They kind of do, but I'm not sure they did in the model itself. I don't know. They kind of do, but they kind of don't. But they're using the base on long-term care, and we're not. This is what kind of my thing is. They're saying requires a nursing home or requires home health care. Those are two vastly different costs, man. Home health care could be anything from just a couple hours, a couple times a week, and then done. Once you get your acute condition covered, or it could be a nursing home where you're going to a skilled care facility. I mean, these are vast differences there, and they don't really specify what they're using. We assume I do appreciate this. They assume the Social Security will be 100% paid. So that's good. Unlike some of these people, 75%. No, they're not doing that. Every year in retirement, the model adds up the guaranteed income from Social Security and pensions and deducts it from the simulated expenses. The household's investments, which grow based on the time-varying model's stochastic rates of return, again, random, I don't know why you just can't say random, are used to fund any leftover amounts. All right, so that makes sense. They're saying, look, man, and Morningstar isn't overly aggressive in their future rates of return projections either. So they're going to have pretty lower, like me. I think that's absolutely the way to go. So I like this study. They're using random sequence of returns in terms of portfolio and whatnot with low basis to begin with, if that makes sense. They're 100% fully funding Social Security, and they're using the Social Security database on actuary tables, death tables to see when you're likely to die. I love all that stuff. I don't like the randomness of the long-term care costs because that is a big problem in their conclusions. All right, check this out. Rental costs are added to the projected retirement expense if this situation occurs in the model. So I wasn't quite sure about that. Are they looking at, because we know about 20 to 30% of retirees are renting. So are they saying of those people, they have a rental cost? I wasn't quite sure about that. So that made me have a little bit of a question there. The projected income, wealth, and expense cash flows are converted from a nominal basis to an inflation-adjusted real basis. That's interesting. So here we're using inflation adjustment on your expenditures. And again, where is the evidence for that? I mean, if we're using that model, it's kind of like polio virus. If we say we have 1 million polio virus, it's not even polio virus, it's poliomyelitis. The vax itself didn't solve poliomyelitis. I don't want to get into if it solved the polio virus. You probably know where I stand on that. But anyway, it's just one, it's like the flu vax. The flu vaccine targets this one subsect, and it doesn't target all this other stuff. But anyway, if you have 1,000 people with poliomyelitis, all right, and then you say later on, now we only have 200 people with poliomyelitis because we changed the definition. Well, okay, but the same thing is here. We're saying that your expenses are going up each and every year with inflation based on what? On what? And where does that come from? I mean, I know where it comes from. That's what we've been using, but where's the evidence for that? So numerator is the sum of all income across all retirement years plus any leftover assets at the time of death. The denominator is the sum of all expenses, real expenses, again, adjusted for inflation. The metric shows the magnitude of the shortfalls, with the retirement funded ratios that are well below 1 indicating significant shortfalls. All right, we're just going to come down and cut to the chase right here. So here's baby boomers. Only 52% of baby boomers are replacement rates for retirement. Are you kidding me? I mean, 48% are at risk under replacement rate. I don't buy that, especially when we go down here. And they say the reason baby boomers and my generation, Generation X, may have lower levels of retirement savings and thus lower levels of retirement replacement, your ability to retire with money left over, is because they were impacted by the transition from defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans. What? Even with these two generations, there are discrepancies, as baby boomers were more likely to experience the early portion of the transition when the understanding of how to use a defined contribution plan were not as developed as it is now. That's just dumb. Because the baby boomers who were starting out their careers in the 70s and 80s, they started at 82. If you start in 82, man, you're freaking living life. Yeah, if you start in 82 just putting $100 a month into a Roth. There wasn't a Roth, I get it, but just something like that. Dude, there's no way your lack of knowledge or lack of the transition from defined benefit plans, which stopped in the late 60s, basically. It's just, come on. A baby boomer is born, what, 1940? 1946 to 1964, if memory serves, or something like that. So we'll just say a baby born in 1950. And when ERISA came out in 1974, that baby boomer was only 24 years old. And that was basically the death knell of the defined benefit plans for most people. Come on, man. It's just such a bad argument. I don't get that. And then they're going to say they have lower retirement savings, but they don't have lower retirement savings. I mean, just look. If we look at the consumer finance, the survey of consumer finances, I'm not going to. It's just not true. I know they're modeling it to say what we're projecting for a future that the younger generations are more planning for because they're putting more money in. But it's just not true that baby boomers are lacking retirement savings relative to their younger peers. I mean, it's crazy to me. I don't understand. I've never heard that. The baby boomers are the ones most at risk. It doesn't make any sense. And you can see right here. They're saying the baby boomers right here only, let's see, right, what do I want to show you here? So 45% are at risk, 52% of baby boomers, 47% of my generation, and yet only 44% of millennials and 37% of Gen Z. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. That means 48% of the people of baby, and I think I screwed up the numbers before, but 48% of the baby boomers are fine, with 52% are at risk. Come on, man. Now, this I do agree with. We found that the retirement funding ratios were dramatically better for those who are simulated to participate in a defined contribution plan for 10 or more years in the future. 100%. And I say it all the time. Same job, same wife, same house. Because of that, you're most likely going to be able to retire. You have contentment, man. Just contentment in the car you drive, contentment in the woman you love, contentment in the home you have, for sure. And that also means you're probably saving in your same job for many, many years. So you're going to have more retirement spending than someone who keeps job hopping, or retirement account values than someone who keeps job hopping. Specifically, we found that 57% of those people not participating in a defined contribution in the future may run short of money, compared with only 21% for those with 20 or more years in a defined contribution plan. Yeah, I would even challenge that. Plan participation matters because Americans who participate in one are much more likely to save. 100%. I mean, there is some. See, this is another thing too. Like the article, the video that CBS did about this electrician and some lady who were just like, oh, it's not, they weren't really saying this, but they made it seem like these people, they're subject to bad, America sucks, man, because these guys have to work. You're like, you got to be a big boy. At some point, it is on you to save for your retirement. I know that's crazy. At some point, you got to do it. You got to do the work, man. If you're spending your money, don't look at us later on when you run out of money. Let's see. We noted that the average account balance for people with a defined contribution plan was 4 times higher than those who were not saving in a defined contribution plan. Given the importance of the defined contribution plan, the retirement industry may want to focus on providing more Americans with access to employer-sponsored plan. I completely agree with that, but they keep doing it, and it's just at some point you got to say it's on you, baby. It's on you. You need to find the money to save. I mean, at some point you can't just you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's just that simple. I think I have a couple of things I want to highlight here. Over 80% of households in the first income quartile with 0 years of future participation in defined contribution plan are projected to run short of money. However, retirement deficits for this income quartile are notably lower in cases which household members are simulated to have a plan for 10 more years. So basically saying regardless of your income bracket, if you're in a retirement plan for 10 or more years, your likelihood of not running out of money, it just goes through the roof. Regardless of your income. If you're low income with no retirement savings, your likelihood of running out of money are much, much higher, assuming, by the way, that long-term care costs come in here. And if you take out long-term care costs, it's not nearly as bad. Not nearly, but it's definitely not 45%. That whole thing's silly. 45%, and I don't buy that for 2 seconds flat. And the reason I know is because, again, we have long-term care. How many people actually spend significant money on long-term care? Not many. I hate to say it, but if you have no assets or limited assets and you go to a long-term care facility, you're going to spend your money down. I don't know why that would be shocking anybody. Literally, why would anybody be shocked? I got $100,000. I need a long-term care facility. Yeah, guess what? The $100,000 is going to be spent for that. But no, I want the government to pay for it. They still are, called Medicaid. So a good article. I challenge the premise a lot, as a matter of fact. Again, kind of going back to what I said about polio virus and whatnot. I challenge the premise of the numbers to begin with, kind of like something that happened in 2020. But I like the fundamental argument, 100%, and I think it's going to be on you, baby. You got to make it work, which means watch your spending and increase your savings. All right, love your thoughts. God bless. Don't forget to crush that like button if you stayed this long. We'll see you.